Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Manage Engine's Shield webinar series. I'm Megha and I'm a senior product marketer. And today it's my pleasure to talk to you all about why zero trust should be at the forefront of your IAM strategy. Now, before I proceed with the agenda, I'd like to quickly let you know that we do take your questions live. So if you have any questions during the session, whether it's about the topic or the product that I'll be talking about at the end, please feel free to make use of the Q&A option on your Zoom panel to drop in your questions. And I will also be available after the session if you want to have a chat with me. I will be online, so you can make use of the chat option on your Zoom panel. I will also be dropping my email address in the chat box. So you can, if you have any questions, you can write to me through that email address. And this session will also be recorded and you will receive a copy of that video link to your registered email address in a couple of days. All right, so let's move on to the agenda for today. So insider threats have been around since the dawn of time, and they've always been a challenge to first detect and then prevent. So that's what makes reducing insider threat risk so difficult. Now that we are living in a digital age where we can access data from anywhere at any time, this has only compounded the issue. So in today's webinar, we look at why and how this particular aspect, that is zero trust, should be part of your IAM strategy. And it's more of a necessity than a luxury now. And another thing is, regardless of where you're organizing or where your resources are located or your size of your business, insiders consistently prove to be one of the biggest threats to organizational security. So larger the organization, higher the risk because of the sheer number of entry points that there are to the networks, the associated accounts, data, as well as the number of people who may potentially have legitimate access. All right. So as just seeing that a couple of attendees are still joining us, so I'm just going to leave the agenda screen on for a moment. Thank you so much. Some of you have messaged. Hello Jacob. Hello Ivan. Thank you. It's great to see you all here today. All right. So first up, let's look at the differences between the insider threat and the external threat. So unlike our external hackers, insiders do not need to infiltrate your perimeter defenses like your firewall, your intrusion prevention systems, because this insider threat could be anyone who has or someone who has had access to the systems, like your full-time employees, contractors, partners, or those who have left the organizations, but those accounts are still just lying active, right? And the damage could be caused by accidental access. If someone happened to come across some information that they probably should not have access to, or negligence when insider failed to adhere to policies, or malicious intent when somebody actively sets out to steal data to bring down systems. So let's look at who are these insiders and who are these people whose behavior exposes us to data loss and brand damage. So typically boils down to three basic descriptions. First category, it could be your current employees, contractors, business partners who either fall for phishing schemes and then become pawns for external hackers, or let's say they inadvertently misuse or expose sensitive data through, let's say, carelessness or a lack of security awareness training. Now, the second category of users are they also include the current as well as your former employees, contractors, or business partners who have authorized access and then intentionally abuse it. Now, while their behavior patterns may seem normal from an internal IT team's perspective, their intentions are not, and their outcome may be data loss or disclosure. Now, the last category are your imposters, right? So outside threat actors that have stolen the credentials of an authorized user and then leverage that user's tools and access for their own purposes. And the outcome is usually a behavior pattern in which the privileges are escalated and the critical data is either exfiltrated or it's exposed to the public. So let's look at how much these insider attacks cost your organization. Now, I have this interesting but alarming findings from the same study as I showed earlier is that many security teams may not recognize the financial impact of an insider attack. Now, while the true cost of a major security incident is not easy to determine, the most common estimate is around $100,000 per successful insider attack. Now, this is one aspect of it, which is the monetary loss. Now, there are forensic issues that you have to deal with to discover how the accident happened, and that requires significant time from your own internal security team to remediate the incident. Now, besides that, you must also conduct additional training, potentially hire outside consultants, and even replace your equipment to close any loopholes. And on top of all of this, there is the operational disruption, loss of critical data, and your brand damage to account for. Now, a zero trust model, let's look at the differences between the traditional approach and the zero trust model. Now, zero trust follows a never trust, always verify policy. It doesn't distinguish between internal and external users or devices. It treats everything as external. So every individual or device that attempts to access a private network, whether it is located inside or outside of an organization's network, must be identified and authorized. Now, unlike other security models which automatically trust individuals and devices that are already within the network, within the corporate network, zero trust advocates trusting no one at any time. So even though the zero trust model encompasses several factors, the only common denominator is the user, right? So the underlying principle is to control who has access to which systems and data and have well-defined policies to define when to allow or restrict access and how to enforce it. So the reason behind this framework is that there may be insider threats within the network in the form of a malicious employee who wants to compromise sensitive data, or privileged user credentials that have been breached by a threat actor outside the organization. Now, as I said earlier, traditional approach, security approach were designed to protect the organization's perimeter. So to get in, one had to be verified and trusted, but once inside the network, further verification was not required. So let's just quickly look at some of the steps in which we can adopt the zero trust model as part of your IAM's infrastructure. So since it operates under the mindset that, or the assumption that all the users and resources are untrusted, and hence it always needs to be verified. So first up is just looking beyond passwords and adopting multi-factor authentication and single sign-on. That can go a long way in improving an organization's overall security posture. Secondly, by granting access to only the resources that the employees need to carry out their tasks, that way your organizations can minimize the exposure. Now, to prevent misuse of a former employee's user accounts, let's say if it's been used by an insider or an external hacker, finding out and immediately disabling the accounts automatically, especially through HR vetted directory identities. And finally, all said and done, it's always wise to audit every activity, and any anomalies must be immediately flagged. So let's look at let's have a closer look at these points that I listed here, and finally I'll take you through or quickly give you an introduction of one of the solutions in the Manage Engine suite, which will help you implement these steps. So the first one, so if trust is just based on location or a network segment is no longer sufficient, it follows that authenticating and authorizing users before granting access to any resource is a critical component of the Zero Trust initiative. Now, relying on usernames and passwords for authentication is a thing of the past, especially considering that some of us are working remotely, some of us are in a hybrid environment. Just solely relying on a password to get in or to access your network is something that we need to reconsider. So in many organizations, even for instance, we have replaced this traditional method with MFA because it needs multiple factors to prove your identity. Now, by mandating several verification factors, hackers cannot brute force their way into your organization's network. And the hope is that if an attacker has stolen the credentials from a breach, they will be denied access when challenged with MFA. Secondly, just to make your experience a lot more seamless, single sign-on will give the ability for the users to sign in at once with their credentials, including their password and their multi-factor authentication. After that, they will have access to all of their applications. So in SSO, the users will authenticate once and then use that authenticated session to access all of the applications that they are authorized to use. Now, by getting rid of passwords, this method suggests that your usability as well as your employee satisfaction is improved. Secondly, for increased visibility, teams can implement multiple security checkpoints in the network to identify what is happening on the network and then apply necessary restrictions on who can access the data to lower the risk of a data breach. Now, for each request that is sent or that is raised by an employee, it's important to know why they require access to those specific resource that they have requested for. Once that access or that request has been reviewed, let's say by the employee's manager, only then the request must be sent to the IT administrator or the IT system administrator to grant access to the necessary resource. And that way, even if an IT admin's credentials are compromised, the attack surface is limited. Secondly, insider threats and compromised user accounts are common concerns that can be mitigated if user access itself is limited in the first place. Now, the concept of least privilege is to grant only the necessary level of privilege that a user needs to perform certain tasks. So by granting least privileges, it's possible to prevent lateral movement of the malware granted by the attackers and thereby reducing internal data exfiltration. The zero trust approach is to provide everyone with the minimal level of privileges that they need. Another way to limit the insider threat is to apply the principle of just-in-time access and grant access for only a specific period of time on an as-needed basis. Now, this can be used especially for your employees who are going to be with you for a short period, like your contract employees, your interns, and so on, right? Very important point, cannot stress this enough, is your stale accounts, especially when an employee leaves an organization. Ideally, their accounts or their privileges should be stripped off immediately, right? And then the account should be deversioned. Now, if this isn't done in time or this isn't done immediately when the employees are leaving the organizations, meaning these employee accounts or these ex-employee accounts will get accumulated over time and they become stale accounts, your dormant accounts. Now, these accounts could be leveraged by your malicious insiders to access your organization's resources. It's always a best practice to create a routine which periodically identifies your stale user accounts and then applies a deprovisioning policy to keep your infrastructure clean enough to be. And this point is great, not just for your stale user accounts, but also your computers, your groups without any members and so on, right? So all these accounts, your stale accounts of your ex-employees, inactive computers, and also groups without any members can be addressed on a regular basis, let's say once a month or once a quarter. So you can try and keep your AD as much as clean as possible. And very important point is, besides your authentication of users and assigning privileges, it's essential to monitor and review all the user activity across the network. Now, with this, you will have a documented record of all the actions that are being performed. And this data can be used to identify any suspicious activity in real time. So a good practice is to integrate this audit data with your existing SIM solution for analysis, so the risky activities can be identified and alerts can be triggered at the same time. So the next, from here onwards, just to make sure that I can give you an introduction to one of the solutions in managed risk, I'll quickly walk you through some of these points that I've listed here. So to ensure successful implementation of zero trust, stringent security and access policies must be in place. Rule-based role access, governing and automating the provision of access is an essential part of this architecture. So that's why this amplifies the need to have an effective IAM solution that can accelerate the efficiency of your zero trust policy. Now, you can always try and implement these best practices with the solutions that you may have deployed from, let's say, another vendor in your environment. But I'm just giving the options here, what can be done with the solutions that we have. This again doesn't talk about all the capabilities of the solution, that is AD360. There's a lot more to it, but I only picked the points that are relevant to the points that I discussed earlier, and I tried to link the points that I spoke about earlier with the features over here. Right, so just a quick introduction to what AD360 is about. Now, some of you might be already using AD360. Some of you might be evaluating the solution at this moment. For some of our attendees today, AD360 is completely, you're hearing about it for the first time. So just for their benefit, I'm going to quickly touch upon what AD360 is about. So it's an identity and access management solution for managing the user identities, governing access to resources, enforcing security, and also ensuring compliance. So it provides all these functionalities for Windows Active Directory, Exchange Server, Microsoft 365, MS Teams, and so on. That is, you can have access to all of this from one single console, right? So you can start and addressing your IAM challenges across your on-prem, your cloud, as well as your hybrid environments in one particular window. Right. The first point where I was talking about that passwords are simply not enough to mitigate your password related security risks. What AD360 does is that it verifies your user identities using MFA through different authentication techniques. I'm just listing a few of them. There's a lot more. You can always access our demo site to find that information. Security questions and answers, Google Authenticator, YubiKey, fingerprint authentication, RSA secure ID, Duo security, and some more. Just keeping it short here, you can always reach out to me if you want to know more about the capabilities it supports. And the point about SSO, to ensure a consistent logon process across your applications, you can secure access to all SAML-enabled cloud applications using the SSO capability, and this includes Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Salesforce, SAP NetWeaver, and some more tools. Second point is having proper authorization controls to avoid any unauthorized changes. So the tool enables or offers customizable workflows that helps you to streamline and monitor your AD tasks. Now, with this capability, what you can do is a regular employee can raise a request to access certain resources that they need. Could be, let's say, they're moved from one department to another, they're promoted from one role to another, and they need access to a certain assets within your network that is relevant for their role. In that case, they can raise a request, and then that request can be reviewed by a designated authority. And that can be a manager, could be the department head, could be the team leader, anyone, right? It can be more than one person even before the IT admin finally grants them the permission. Right? So that is the entire flow of the workflow can be customized. Who can raise a request, who can review it. And by review, I mean it can be approved, it can be also rejected. And finally, who's getting to actually execute the action. The administrators can also be configured that way. Oh, sorry. All right. So the third point is automating your group permissions management. So it offers automated time-bound group permissions management so that you as an IT administrator can assign users to specific groups and then revoke them after a certain period. Now, additionally, the tool also provides predefined reports. By predefined reports, I mean we have an extensive report library, and these reports can be generated without using any scripts. You can have them exported in multiple formats. You can have them scheduled to your inbox. And these reports can be especially on your permissions like your MTFs, your share permissions, and you can identify servers and shares in your network and also verify the level of access that each individual user or group has for them. Now, you can also add users to top-level security groups. You can grant permissions to, let's say, important file servers for a limited time. And when I say for a limited time, and if you're configuring the automated way, After a certain period, let's say if you configure them for a particular period, for a week or for 10 days, after that, the permissions will be automatically revoked, meaning you do not have to follow up on that particular action and then remove the privileges later. Now, the fourth point is deprovisioning using automation. So that way, the tool will identify all your dormant objects. It will remove the privileges, move them to a different container, remove any licenses that are being linked to those accounts, export a user mailbox to a specified location, and so on, right? So all the list of activities that goes on as part of your organization's deprovisioning policy, right, before deleting the account or disabling the account can be carried out, and you can automatically clean up all your inactive, disabled, account expired users, computers in AIM, right? All of this can be automated. Secondly, and the last point is very important, is tracking your or auditing the privilege use across your domain. So using 8360, you can track your privileged user access to data that is regulated by IT compliance policies and then instantly detect any accidental or willful violation of your data integrity. Again, I have just listed a few points that are relevant to the topics that have been listed earlier. If you're interested to know more about 8360, if you're currently evaluating the solution, and if you want one of our team members to get in touch with you for a detailed online demo, that's possible as well. So what I'll do is I will just quickly launch a poll on the screen. Right, so at the moment on your screen, you can see a quick survey, just a couple of questions. If you are evaluating any of the solutions, right, you can go ahead and choose that over here. And if you do want one of our team members, technical experts to get in touch with you for an evaluation, please do choose yes in the second option. And we're also offering a year-end discount for the solutions. And I'm just going to quickly leave the link on the chat. You can always access that. So you can see that I have shared a link on the screen. On your chat window, you can access that and avail the offers for the solutions that you want to. Right, so I'm still getting an entry, so I will leave this page on for another 30 seconds or so. I hope you've received the link right now. I see some of you have questions on the certificate for the trainings. I will be sharing an email address to you, Ivan. Please do get in touch with the concerned team and they will help you with the certifications if you've been attending our sessions. I just want to quickly mention, just reiterate the point here that the offers are just for US and UK regions and not for any other regions. Thank you so much. So I guess most of you have participated in the survey, so I will just end that. But if you do have any questions, I will leave my email address on chat. You can write to me over here. Thank you. All right, so just a quick poll for the session feedback. I launched that one as well. Again, I'll be able to see the responses live, so you can let me know what you thought about today's session. I request Ivan to just please stay with me for another minute or so while I get in touch with my team for the concerned certifications team email address. If any of you have concerns about certifications, let's say you've attended our sessions, you've not received the certifications, please drop an email to certifications team. They will be able to help you on that. Okay, thank you so much for your responses. I really appreciate your feedback. Thank you. And with that, we have come to the end of the session. I'll be here online. If you have any questions, I will be happy to take them. And I hope to see you all for our next event. Thank you and have a great day.